Metro Historic Zoning Commission meeting on November 15, 2023. For each case, there will be a public hearing. We ask that the applicant keep their presentation to under 10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes unless they have previously requested in writing for 5 minutes as a representative of a group or organization. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County, vis a statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. Okay, our first on our agenda is adoption of the October 18, 2023 minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Commissioner Johnson? Second by Commissioner Cotton. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Number 2 is our adoption of the agenda. Ms. Ziegler, are there any changes?
Yes. 2023 Benjamin Street is a request to defer. 902 Boscobel Street is a request to defer. 1506 Ferguson is moving from the consent agenda to the public hearing part of the agenda. And 1504 Holly Street is notification requirements were not met. So off the agenda completely are 7, 8, and 22, and moving to the end is number 13.
Okay, thank you for that. Motion to approve the consent agenda as revised.
So moved.
Okay. Commissioner Price, second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Okay. Seeing none opposed, that motion passes. Thank you.
All right. So the consent agenda.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to make sure I couldn't tell. Are there any council members here who wish to speak? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
All right. For the consent agenda, items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. So I'll read these one by one. If you're in opposition and would like an item removed, please raise your hand. All right. So first we have the administrative permits issued for the prior month. There were 35 since the last meeting. 1001 Mansfield Street, new construction of an addition and partial demolition. 418 Bushnell Street, new construction of an addition. 2211 Elliott Avenue, new construction of an addition. 2403 Belmont Boulevard, new construction of an outbuilding. 1911 Ashwood Avenue, new construction of an outbuilding. 1708 Sweetbriar Avenue, new construction of an addition. 1506 Ferguson has been removed, and so it will be presented at the end of the meeting. 3002 Overlook Drive, new construction of an addition. 209 3rd Avenue North, new construction of an addition. 106 Blackburn Avenue, new construction of an addition and outbuilding. 3813 Whitland Avenue, new construction of an outbuilding. 3901 Valley Road, new construction of an addition. 4200 Nebraska Avenue, new construction of an addition. And 400 Broadway signage, a revision to a previously approved plan. So staff recommends approval of the items on the consent agenda with the applicable applicable conditions listed in their individual staff recommendations, finding the applications to meet the design guidelines of their respective overlays.
Thank you, Melissa.
Sure.
Okay. Any questions other than, we don't do any kind of open public hearing? Yep. Okay. Motion to approve. Commissioner Cashin?
Second, noting there was no objection in the gallery.
Would you like me to confirm that, Commissioner?
I saw no hands.
Okay, all right. Second by Commissioner Mosley. All in favor? Okay. Seeing none opposed, and that motion passes. Thank you. We will actually have a comment from our Metro Legal by Ms. Ann Mickelson.
Sure, thank you. This is just a brief review of the presentation and hearing process for the Historic Zoning Commission. This is pursuant to their rules, and just a reminder of how this process works. First, there's a staff presentation, a summary of the project along with the recommendation that's available online. Then the applicant, including all members of their team, may present for up to 10 minutes. The applicant may ask to save 2 of the 10 minutes for rebuttal of public comment if there is public comment. And the commission may grant 2 minutes rebuttal time if that time remains from the original 10 minutes. After the applicant presents, then there's an opportunity for public comment, and each member of the public has up to 2 minutes to speak. Groups, if they ask in advance, may speak for up to 5 minutes. The commission may then ask follow-up questions of any presenter, either during the presentation, or at the end of their presentations and comments, as well as during its deliberations. And the response times for those questions do not count against the time allotments. Once the public hearing is closed, the applicants and members of the public cannot initiate remarks during that deliberation period without an invitation from the commission to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Ann. Any questions? Clear? All right. I think we can move on to our next agenda item.
The first case is 1907 Russell Street. The house at 1907 Russell Street is a circa 1917 folk Victorian house that contributes to the historic character of the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. In April 2022, the Metro Historic Zoning Commission approved a rear addition to the house, and a preservation permit was issued for the project. Staff issued a preservation permit for outbuilding alterations in October of 2022. Both permits were emailed to the applicant with info about the required inspections and product approvals, including the requirements for window product approvals prior to purchase and installation. During a progress inspection, staff found that windows had been installed throughout the addition and outbuilding without approval. The windows that were installed do not meet the design guidelines. Staff contacted the applicant for information about the specific window product that was used, but staff has not received the specific product info from the applicant. While the specific product remains unknown, staff was able to tell from observation alone that the windows do not meet the design guidelines. The windows that were used are made of vinyl. With a few exceptions, vinyl is not considered a compatible material for windows because of the high gloss typically associated with the material and because of its inability to be sanded and painted like wood windows. Vinyl windows also typically have inappropriate detailing, such as large weep holes and fusion welded corners. These elements are not typical in historic windows. The windows that were installed on the addition and outbuilding have all of these characteristics. They are vinyl windows with fusion welded corners and prominent weep holes. The windows have exterior grids, but do not appear to have interior spacer bars, which also does not meet the permit. Also, these windows have additional beveled framing that is not typical of windows on a frame building. Staff worked with the applicant to correct the violation and to determine potential solutions, but the applicant is not interested in requesting approval as is or correction. Therefore, staff requests a show cause hearing to explain why the permits were not followed and why the permit should not be rescinded. For the recommendation, staff recommends disapproval of the new windows installed in the addition and outbuilding at 1907 Russell Street, finding that they do not meet the design guidelines, and staff recommends that the permit not be rescinded, but that the existing windows of the addition and outbuilding be removed and replaced with a compatible window product within 60 days of the commission's decision. I'm happy to take questions, and I know the applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks.
Any questions to him at the moment? Okay. Applicant, please come forward.
Thanks for hearing us today. We've spoken to Joseph at this
Please give us your name and address.
Yes, my name is Courtney Wilson.
Ryan Vella.
So we are the homeowners. This was a renovation project for us. We used Kane Co. Construction. We knew that they had to follow guidelines. We paid them almost $900,000 for this house. Upon them getting the final payment a couple of months ago, they filed for bankruptcy a few hours later, leaving us to deal with all of the mess that they have caused, including liens, people not paid, which is breaking our hearts, and apparently windows that were not installed, though we paid extra for the windows that were to be installed correctly. So we are in a position now where we can't even sell the house. We have to rent it until the market at least shifts a little bit, so we're already underwater. There's no presentation. I will say that I've renovated a lot of houses in East Nashville. I have never been in this situation, not once. It's heartbreaking on many levels for us. What I can say is that when you are standing at the house, none of the front windows were changed. You can't tell if you're standing in between the houses. You would for sure, I'm sure, as Mr. Rose said, you all know if they're not the right windows. I don't know, but you would. But that's where we stand today. We are definitely not in a position to spend any more money on this house, nor replace all the windows. But I don't know where that leaves us all.
We thank you for your courage to come to us this afternoon.
Thank you. We've also not been able to contact, I think, Mr. Rose has tried on several occasions to contact the contractor. The contractor did respond to him and acknowledge that he used the correct windows, that we paid for the correct windows, but can't find the receipt. And that's all I can really say about that.
Okay. Would you like to speak as well?
I was just going to say we're asking / begging for forgiveness on this one, because we're in pretty deep here, and if there's anything you can do to help us or work with us, that would be really appreciated.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll see what we do. If you comments are finished,
Our comments are finished,
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Have a seat for a moment. We will open public hearing. Is there anyone here to have any comments on this project? Otherwise, we will close public hearing and the commission will deliberate. Thank you. It's a toughie.
Well, I guess I'll start off. This is indeed an unfortunate situation. I'm mighty sorry for your troubles here. It seems like quite often we're stuck between the homeowners and their contractors and their vendors. And usually what I've seen is the homeowners kind of hire an attorney and go after the people who have not done what they are supposed to do. But we do have an attorney here, and I'd be interested in hearing what, they have to say on the matter.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, I mean, I can't really speak to their situation because I don't know the particulars, and I can't give legal advice to someone who's not at Metro.
I'm sorry?
I can't give legal advice to someone who's not at Metro.
Okay, thank you, though. That's good interjection there. Okay, I think we have to clearly see it as the project before us and also the permitting and the show no cause. So it is, again, a very difficult presentation.
So may I ask some clarifying question? I think preservation permit was issued to, what they call, K&D Works LLC. And I think the homeowner is also K&D Works LLC. And I'm trying to understand preservation, the relationship, the permit was issued to the LLC and as well as homeowners LLC and the contract, whose is the contractor and the relationship with a permit holder as well as, actual doing the contract, and where's the breakdown of the communication occurred?
We don't usually ask questions about the relationship between contractor and property owner because the permit is for the property. Joseph might remember who the contractor was, but we don't know the relationship.
Bram Kane was the contractor, but you're correct on the permit. The parcel owner is listed on the permit, but that's on every preservation permit. But yes, Bram Kane was the contractor.
And just to clarify, he is not to be found, non-responsive.
We have had some minimal contact with him, but have not been able to track down exactly what product was used, and a lot of it has come. We've gotten some responses from his attorney, or some language from his attorney that he's filed for bankruptcy and all of that as well.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yep. I'll say as empathetic as a board or individuals as we can be on it's a contractual issue that we can't parse outside of, of our rules and guidelines. And to that end, the windows are observed on inspection and certainly as presented here, non-compliant with the guidelines. Beyond, I don't see anything beyond that. It's difficult for me to bring anything else into it beyond that. That's what we're here to do, is to observe that. So that those would be my observations.
And I have a question, I think probably for legal. With our hands tied a bit on this, is there any flexibility in the within 60 days portion of our decision?
You mean in terms of any change to the permit or any order that would issue?
Well, staff recommends the permit should not be rescinded, but the existing permit be replaced within 60 days. Is there a way, we have leeway to extend that, correct?
I believe you do, yeah.
So.
And Commissioner, that might be a
I just threw that out there
consideration
to my colleagues, and that these poor folks are going to be tied up in some legal issues for a while.
What is yours? What do you suggest?
Depending on how we go.
So possibly maybe instead of 2 months, 4 months.
Or longer.
Okay.
Or 6. 6. If we go that way, to at least.
And that's under our purview to do that?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And I do think that's appropriate because 60 days for ordering and replacement and, you know, the work to put windows in. With supply chain issues we're having today, that's not much time at all. So I think the extension would be warranted just for that reason, if not for the other complicating factors.
Right. Exactly. Okay. I mean, it is pretty straightforward because of our purview and however we're trying to do. Hopefully the applicant will understand that as well, and that by giving an extended time, that is unusual. It's an unusual period that we would extend, so we hope that that is of some consolation to the applicant.
Madam Chair, with respect to 1907 Russell Street and the violations observed there, I move to approve the recommendation of the staff and provide 180 days for removal and compliance with the guidelines for appropriate window installation.
There is a motion. There's a second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor? Okay. Do I see any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, that motion passes. Applicant, we, again, encourage to come before us, and we do wish you good luck on your process.
Next up is 915 Emmett Avenue. It's a circa 1952 house that does not contribute to the historic character of the Greenwood Conservation Zoning overlay. MHDC staff did issue an administrative permit to demolish this house in August of this year. The proposal is for infill. Emmett is kind of a odd or rarely driven down dead-end street off of Granada in the northern part of the Greenwood neighborhood. On this street, there is no historic context. There are 6 houses total facing Emmett. The ones on the top are the ones on the eastern side, and they're from the 1950s. The ones on the bottom are from the 1980s, and they are on the west side of the street, and all of the houses on the street are non-contributing. So here is the proposed site plan. There is no alley here, so they're using an existing driveway. The house is 1 story with a total height of about 20 feet and 5 inches, which is fairly modest in scale. And here are the side elevations. Here are some perspective dwellings. So altogether, particularly since there's no historic context on the street, staff finds that the proposed infill meets the historic context, or the wider historic context, and meets the design guidelines. And we have pretty much our common conditions here, including adding front porch columns and bases, or front porch caps and bases to the columns.
Quick question
Yeah.
on just cursory review of the front elevation. The window, it looks like the rack of the porch, you know, where the rake's coming down, where it hits the windows there, it's just going to be the tightest of, where the roof of the porch is, and the windows are in that upper part of that, right. It's going to be the tightest of details to get a window of that size without it crowding the,
right.
Whatever framing is going to be there. That framing is not 0 inches thick.
Right.
So maybe point that out and have the applicant address the window size there. So
and we would approve a smaller window size if that was an issue, if they wanted to come back with a different window size. I don't see it as necessarily a big deal, but constructed as drawn would be not great.
Okay. Any other commissioners' question? Okay. Thank you. Melissa?
Hi, John Rankin, 1709 Woodland Street. It's a simple 1,600 square foot house. We understand all the conditions before us, including windows and HVAC units, et cetera. We've worked with Melissa to get the driveway to the side and going to the back, and when we get through this process, we'll submit all our windows and doors and other things to the staff. And we'll take any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, applicant. All right, we open public hearing. Close public hearing. Commissioners' discussion.
I think this is a nice design. I appreciate seeing a modest house we see so many giant ones these days. I think it's a good proposal, and I'm willing to go ahead and make a motion if that's acceptable. With regard to 915 Emmett Avenue, I move for approval of the staff recommendation with conditions.
Commissioner Price? Second, Commissioner Johnson? All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
All right. The house at 3616B Westbrook Avenue is a circa 1915 bungalow that contributes to the historic character of the Richland Weston neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. The application is to demolish an existing rear covered porch and to construct a new rear covered porch as well as an outbuilding. Both the addition and outbuilding meet all base zoning setbacks. The addition extends wider on the left side, but the wider portion is uncovered and it replaces an existing condition. The lot is more than 10,000 square feet, so the maximum footprint for the outbuilding is 1,000 square feet. Since Richland Weston has design guidelines that do not include add-on options for things such as porches, the footprint for that porch is included in the overall footprint of the outbuilding. So as proposed, the footprint of the outbuilding is approximately 1,134 square feet, including that porch element. Staff recommends that the footprint not exceed 1,000 square feet in order to meet the design guidelines. The rear covered porch addition is single story. It meets the design guidelines as proposed. So here's the left elevation, the right, and the rear. Since the historic house is 1.5 stories, the outbuilding is limited to 1.5 stories with a maximum eave height of 10 feet measured from highest point of grade. The plan also includes an extended eave, that porch element on the elevation facing the rear of the house that creates the covered porch you'll see at the top left image. As proposed, the primary eave, so not the porch eave, measures to a little over 12 feet from grade. So staff would recommend that the eave height of the outbuilding not exceed 10 feet, which is the maximum per the design guidelines. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval with the conditions set forth in the staff recommendation, but with some revisions. So the first condition remains that the outbuilding not exceed 1,000 square feet. The second is regarding materials. The third condition regarding the dormer step back can be removed as it's been met. And then with the addition of the fourth condition that the eaves of the outbuilding shall not exceed 10 feet measured from highest point of grade. That was just an oversight on staff's part. So with these conditions, staff would find the outbuilding would meet the design guidelines for Richland West End.
Thank you, Melissa. Any questions? Okay, not at the moment.
Commissioners, my name is Van Pond, 2929 Sidco Drive, Suite 105, Nashville, 37204. Language matters, and these guidelines are written to give you all guidance. They're actually why you exist. They're why I exist. So when we start redefining what footprint is, or saying that it's been inferred for our cantilevered eave porch, which is absolutely an effort to have a little extra shelter in front of a glass garage door, but it has no columns, it's non-supported. In Metro, footprint is the part of the building that hits the grade. I'm having a little tough time accepting that I haven't put columns out there, I haven't paved underneath it, I can't do things like that. I haven't done things like that very consciously. To bring the scale down in the backyard for the clients. Really simple. We're gonna have to lower the eaves anyway. That was caught yesterday, and I was informed yesterday After going through a process of acceptably redesigning the whole thing in 36 hours to meet staff's need to evaluate and give you your recommendation. I would ask for you to consider that it is an extended eave, it's not a porch. Happy to meet the 10-foot height guidelines, even though staff just called this in their presentation a 1.5-story building. Don't have a problem with that, but again, language matters. In the guidelines about outbuildings, the only definition of a 2-story outbuilding is it has an enclosed stair to the second floor. That is what this has. So is it a 2-story outbuilding or a 1-story outbuilding? There's not a definition for a 1.5-story outbuilding in your guidelines. Again, I'm not arguing that, but I think that's something to consider as you go forward and clarify that when you have a chance. I'd really appreciate your consideration on the deep eave. The owners would too. I don't have to live here. They do. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Pond?
Yes. And thank you. There's I guess, a few different ways that an eave can be lowered. One would be an extension of it, some distance, and another might be a steeper rake on a roof, or you could sort of barn the roof up and maintain some space inside. Is there an indication or preference on your part, or would you like it as? Of course, you'd like it as drawn. But to get down to 10 feet.
Why would I have drawn it otherwise?
Yes. Is there? I'm not asking you to design in process, but I'm curious.
We're going to make the roof pitch steeper.
Okay.
I could bring everything down to about 9 feet off the ground if I had 4-foot eaves all the way around it. But I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But yes, we will make the roof pitch steeper.
Okay.
That will likely change the exterior appearance on the ends from a 3-bay window to a 2-bay window on the second level. But that's the change that I see happening.
Okay.
It would not make the building any taller. That's it.
Okay, that was
not to do editorialize.
You've done the inferred math there that I guess I was curious about. Thank you.
All right. Anything else to Mr. Pond? Okay, not at the moment. Thank you, sir. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Commissioners?
I appreciate Mr. Pond's presentation. I find, in terms of the deep eave, so-called porch element, I tend to agree this isn't a porch to me. It's a extended eave. It's on the inside of the property, facing the back of the house. It's not considerably over what the footprint allowance is, and to me, this is an acceptable design element for this outbuilding. So.
Thank you, Commissioner.
No exception taken to those comments.
Okay. So I guess bring it in.
Shall I make a motion?
Okay.
With 3616B Westbrook Avenue, I recommend approval of the proposal with the exception of condition 1, to revise it that the outbuilding footprint, we'll just remove it. Yeah. Okay. And going forward, it's a good conversation for us to have. What does a footprint mean? I think it's where the footing of the building is, and this, in my opinion, is not really a porch that counts toward footprint. So with that, I recommend approval with the removal of condition 1.
Before we do that, so staff, is that sufficient for going forward? Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. There's a second by Commissioner Cashin. Going to do coin toss there.
So, point of clarification or a little additional
Yes, sir.
discussion. As the applicant has stated, there'll be some redesign and the elevations will change. I think with this direction, certainly the staff, in the resubmission of drawings for permitting, the staff would be equipped to approve that, assuming no additional height or substantive change beyond lowering the eaves and some window changes that would be necessitated by lowering those eaves.
That's the addendum to the motion. Is that an addendum to the motion, or is that good to add?
Yeah, it's not
Sufficient? It's not an addendum?
I didn't hear it that way.
Okay. All right, just clarification. Yes. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes.
Can I add one point?
Yes,
Just not
please.
specific to this project, but to the design guidelines. As you know, most of the design guidelines for neighborhood conservation are in consolidated, where how the footprint is measured is defined and how 1.5 stories is defined. Richland West End is not in that section, but I think that they may be considering coming aboard. So that will be clearer for people working in that neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you. Duly noted. Okay. Yes, thank you. All right. 1506 Ferguson, is that right?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right. This one was
thank
pulled
you.
from the consent agenda. So 1506 Ferguson is a circa 1920 frame bungalow that contributes to the historic character of Belmont Hillsborough. Here's the site plan. The commission did approve the garage footprint, the garage that you see on the site plan a couple months ago in September. Here's the front elevation. The proposal includes a ridge raise, and the addition also extends wider than the historic house. So the italicized portion of the design guidelines do state that, quote, in order to assure that an addition has achieved proper scale, the addition should generally be shorter and thinner than the existing building. Exceptions may be made with unusual constraints that make these parameters, unreasonable, such as an extreme grade change or atypical parcel or size. In these cases, an addition may rise above or extend wider than the existing building, although generally the addition should not be higher and, should not, I think there's a word missing there, be higher and extend wider. So again, this addition is located at the rear, as required by the design guidelines. It includes a 2-foot ridge raise. The ridge raise meets the design guidelines in terms that it's inset 2 feet and then it does go up 2 feet, the maximum. The addition is inset appropriately with the back corners, but then on the right side, it does extend to be 14 feet wider than the historic house. A note about, and I think this came up last month as well, about wider additions. So in Belmont Hillsborough, which again is not in the consolidated design guidelines, the guidelines state that wider additions can be appropriate when the house is less than 30 feet wide and shifted on the lot. But in practice, the commission has regularly approved wider additions in this neighborhood when the lots are wide, typically wider than 60 feet. So this one's wider than 70 feet. So even though the design guidelines don't necessarily say that you can have a wider addition on a lot that's wider, in practice, that's what the commission has decided on several cases. Again, staff found this to be appropriate because the addition, it is taller, but the taller portion's inset 2 feet, and then the portion that extends wider is shorter than the historic house by a couple feet. So here are just the side elevations, and you can see there the wider portion of the addition. Here's the other elevation. Here's the rear elevation, which I think actually does show pretty well that the taller portion of the addition is inset, and other than the dormers, which you see here, let me go back, and here, the portion that's taller is really, and for the bulk of the roof is really just that little corner triangular piece. So overall, staff felt that the height and scale met the design guidelines in the context. So staff is recommending approval with pretty much our standard conditions in terms of shoring plans, approval of materials, HVAC locations, etc. Happy to answer any questions.
How wide is the house? Since the guidelines do set a parameter there.
Sure, it's less than 30 feet wide. I'd have to look it up. If you give me a minute, I could look it up, so.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Sure,
Yeah, there it
that'll be
is.
great when the applicant comes in, okay?
But yes, it's not 30 feet wide. It's more than 30 feet wide.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. We might have some questions when the applicant comes through. Right, okay.
My name is Martin Wick. I'm at 912 Bailey Street. I'm the architect for this project. I do have a quick question about procedure. Normally, when we get pulled off of consent, it's because of public comment, which that comes, and then I have a chance of doing a rebuttal for that. But in this case, I think the comments came from a commissioner, and so I'm not sure if I'll have a chance to reply to those, or is that just kind of going to be part of like the question and answer right now? I just want to make sure I'm clear on that before I get started.
So the commissioners can ask you questions, like during the course of your presentation, and also during deliberations. They want to come back.
So
and
I'll
ask
just
you
come
more
up with that.
questions.
All right. I think the main points Melissa already made about the overall the portion that is taller is completely contained behind the main house. It's I think it's about 39 feet wide. The historic house is. And then, the portion that extends wider than the existing house is, 2 feet, about 2 feet shorter than the historic house, not 2 feet shorter than the ridge raise. So, we've done some things to try to make sure that that portion, is at a reduced scale compared to the house. And then the main portion of the addition is still hidden behind the house as it might normally be. The historic house is only about, it's like 7'9" tall in the attic. So without that ridge raise, there's really no way to get usable space in that attic. Obviously, we have the added benefit of the grade that gives us the basement, but that's usually not really taken into account as far as where we're getting space when we're working on a design like this. The other thing that I just want to point out is that, as Melissa mentioned, going wider on an addition on a wide lot isn't really in the guidelines. It's just something that's really based on precedent, on how the commission has ruled. In the over 10 years that I've been working in these neighborhoods, I've never seen a question come up about whether a house that has a 60-foot wide lot can have an addition that extends wider than the house. So that's what led our design here. It's based on the fact that that's regularly approved. I have a couple projects. This one from 2017 that went wider and also taller. And this was back when you guys were approving houses that actually went more than 2 feet taller, but we've moved past that at this point. And then another one, 2804 Oakland, that was 2021 that was a similar project. It goes 2 feet taller. It has that grade change, and it extends wider. I guess with the site plan, it extends wider than the historic house as well. So we're working based on those precedents. That's what we've used to guide our design for this project. And I'm happy to take any other questions at this time.
Any questions, commissioners?
I've got one, and this may be more opinion. I don't know that it's necessarily regulated by the guidelines. On a clapboard house, I find it curious to do a brick addition on a clapboard house. Could you just, was it just an architectural decision?
They really like brick houses, and they really wanted to do a brick addition, so that led that decision there.
That answers that?
Yeah.
All right. In terms of the appearance of permanence, or it seems, I don't know, I just, interesting.
Yeah.
I won't make any comments.
The house also currently has, it's vinyl siding. Whoever, previously owned it didn't do a great job of taking care of the exterior. The basement is actually, it's a wood pier foundation right now that has just like plywood boards wrapping that. So there's a lot of exterior work to be done on the historic house as well, as part of this.
Understood.
Yeah.
Is the historic part of the house the basement? Excuse me. Is it a full basement?
It's mostly dug out at this point. Yeah. They there's kind of odd pieces that are different heights, but the majority of the basement is dug out to about 8 feet tall.
And is it part of the overall project would be to reclaim all of the dugout basement space? Or?
We'll probably leave the front end mostly kind of unfinished storage, because that's where the shortest portions of it are. There's an existing sort of 2 foot thick, historic stone wall at the front wall of the house that probably doesn't go that deep, but then it quickly comes down from there. So we'll probably leave that area untouched as much as possible so that we hopefully don't have to mess with that historic foundation wall. But then from there back, we're already going to be digging new footings and CMU walls, so they're going to kind of take care of all of that at the same time. Yeah.
I will just add that the house is 36 feet wide at the main portion of it, and then the bay that you see up here on the screen adds another 2 feet. So 36 feet, 38 feet total with the bay. And that's according to the property assessor.
Say that again, please.
That's according to the property assessor footprint, which is usually fairly accurate.
Yeah, it's
within
there,
yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions to Mr. Wick? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Open public hearing. We still have a few people in here, so close public hearing. Right, commissioners?
I'll just jump in and say I asked for this to be pulled so we could talk about it. And I hope the applicant understands we need to revisit these issues every now and then and see where we are and reckon with them because it's taller and it's wider and eyeball it, it's way bigger than, it's more than doubles the size of the original historic house. So I appreciate Mr. Wicks supplying some examples of recent similar projects that did this. Again, we're getting into parsing what does footprint mean and what do the guidelines actually say. They don't really say we're only going by footprint size. It says an addition should not more than double the size of the house. So I just feel like eyeballing it, this is more than doubling the size of the original house. And are we as a commission intentionally wanting to encourage these kinds of projects? So that's what I wanted to ask.
Is that a question to staff?
No, to us.
In terms of doubling the size of the original house? That's a good point.
I mean, we all do work together on these and decide what's appropriate and what's not, so.
Is there a comment on that in the recommendation, Alyssa?
Sorry.
For the size?
So let me go back to the.
And this is good discussion for sure.
So you can see on the architect has actually provided the footprint calculations here. So the historic house is a little bit clearer, but it's about doubling the footprint, but that's if you're counting the small addition at the rear that's being removed.
And I guess my question is, do we define the size of a house by its footprint or volume? The volume of this addition is the scale and the massing of it also count, I feel like. And applicants are, and I'm not, Mr. Wick and other architects do what their clients are asking them to do, but I just think we should think about these things because my reading of the guidelines, we've got three things here that seem to be giving a pass on. I mean, it's taller, it's wider, and it's more than double the size of the original house. So I just want to staff, commission, is this okay? Because applicants will continue to push the envelope as we see a lot.
That is a good point because in the past, when Belmont Hillsborough Association has said that they don't want to have bigger, or if I can recall, to where it continues to increase, and to keep it a little bit more to the historic context. So I do recall that over the years. So I think it's really appropriate when we can, have a pause to where certain things like that are, stacking up.
I do appreciate the conversation, but I'm looking at the footprint actually, but it seems like, yes, it should not double, but historic house is 1558, and then addition is 1544. So actually it's even slightly, but still smaller. It's not technically doubling. And in the past, we approved the addition similar to the size of the doubling, but since it technically meets, it's not doubling, so we previously approved many houses. So with that sense, because it meets on the, as far as number goes, meets the guideline, I don't feel comfortable not approving kind of, give different guideline to this particular design. And so, yes, indeed, it's taller and wider, but I think the design portion is rather conscientious because taller portion is strictly behind the historic portion, and then wider portion is shorter in the height. So I think they are trying to kind of meet the spirit of the guideline, not to doubling, but meet in the neighborhood in the, spirit of the guideline. So just strictly looking at the number and footprint alone, I'm a bit hesitant to kind of denying or asking for the reduction.
Okay.
The question was asked, and so we'll have some further discussion.
Yes, sir.
David, I appreciate just, let's ask the question and have a conversation about it. I think the taller and wider, I think with the ridge raise is certainly something we've permitted and is by right. Or I say by right. Yeah, but it's by right. It is a strategy, I think, that has been used and accepted for some time. And so it would be, we wouldn't have to say yes, but that would be, I'd have a hard time standing on that one or behind that one as it not being necessarily or potentially viewed as arbitrary. Then you combine that with the wider. I think in this design as viewed from the street, and because the lot is wider, it doesn't appear from the street, from the front street, massive. As if if the lot were level and you put a 1.5 story on the back of it and it was the freight train sort of concept with a narrower lot. To maximize a lot, that's what we see and that's what's done. Camelbacks aren't terribly common. We've, in very rare occasions, approved something of that nature. So I think in this case, to be punitive or think of it in a punitive way because they're taking advantage of a slope in the lot, I don't say I don't see the basement, but it's less obvious from the street, as viewed from the street. And not that we don't take the total picture into account, but that has some sway with me in analyzing this from a height, scale, total package viewpoint. It's not in disagreement to your questioning, is it appropriate or not in terms of meeting the guidelines or the principle of where your question is founded, but that's just my view on this application on this lot. I think one question I at least like to consider, it's maybe not worth, I consider it in developing my own evaluation of a project is, okay, if not this, then what else? If not a side addition, would there be additional square footage on the back to maximize this? We don't necessarily have to accept that an applicant can maximize, shoving as much onto the lot as possible, but I think if you took the side and put it on the back, would the project be better or worse for it? Is one means to evaluate a project as, and on this one, I don't find the project improved or better necessarily, that the side addition is overwhelming the project and or is out of scale and too massive. Those are my thoughts on this particular case. I think we've erred in the permissive, maybe too much on some others, but I have a hard time on this one in particular finding fault with the applicant's method for this design and in presenting this as being compliant with the guidelines.
I think Commissioner Price's questions are the right ones and the ones we need to keep before ourselves as we evaluate all these. I think that the applicant did do a good job at researching what the precedent had been, what we've done in the past, as well as working within the guidelines and to the extent that this site was a little unique. But I don't have a major problem with the way that this development has been put together. But I think they are the right questions that we need to keep before ourselves.
And I know sometimes we use some strong words like punitive, but that's, more or less of a discussion. This is good, and there are times that, we as commissioners can do that and can say, here's a project that we need to just refresh ourselves on what we look at. So it's all good. It's good discussion. Anyone else? Other than that, someone please make a motion.
With regard to 1506 Ferguson Avenue, I move for approval, the staff recommendation.
Commissioner
I
Price?
appreciate your discussion. Thank you.
Second by the vice chair. And all in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you, applicant. We didn't really mean to give you a hard time. Please don't take that as as punitive. Okay, I think our last piece is number 25, which is request to rehear 1402 Beechwood. And I am deferring to legal to give us a refresher on how we do this process.
Yes, thank you. You don't get a lot of petitions for rehearing, so we thought it would be useful just for me to kind of read through the rules and remind everyone how this process works. So basically, an aggrieved party, can you not hear me with this?
And just bring it closer to you. You have such a soft, gentle voice.
Too quiet. Is this better? Yes. All right, thanks. So an aggrieved party has 60 days to submit a petition for a rehearing of a case regarding a preservation permit application. And in order for that process to happen, you need to have new evidence submitted, which could not reasonably have been presented at the previous hearing. And that request must be in writing and recite with specificity the new evidence and the reasons for the request. And that application in writing, that request in writing may include plans and diagrams. Now, a request for a rehearing, in order for there to be a motion to vote on that, it has to be a motion by a member of the board who voted in the majority when the case was originally heard. And I believe we have a very full commission here today, so that shouldn't be a problem. So you need an affirmative vote of 4 members who were in the majority when it was previously heard to grant a rehearing. And if there's not 4 votes for that, that will be deemed a denial of that petition for a rehearing. And if the the request is denied, the zoning administrator prepares the appropriate order. And if the request is granted, then the case is set for a public hearing at the future date. Usually that'll be the next commission meeting. So what you're doing right now, you're just deciding on the request for the rehearing. The rehearing itself is not taking place today, just to clarify that.
And also the 60 days, is a 60 days submission to the staff?
That's within 60 days of the public hearing. When that initial hearing took place, that's when the clock starts.
So if we rehear this, it would be 60 days from today?
They have 60 days to request the rehearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when would we if it is approved?
Right.
If it is voted on, what would be the next rehear date?
You could set it for December.
That would be clear. Right, just want to make sure our commissioners are clear on when that would be. Yeah. Okay?
And then before we vote on this, is there a presentation by the staff so that we understand if the criteria for rehearing was met, if additional information was provided?
We didn't provide a recommendation because it's a procedural issue more than a design issue. They provided an additional letter, photographs, and some articles that are not specific to this project. And those that were part of the motion last time that could make the move to accept the rehearing would be Vice Chair Stewart, Commissioners Cotton, Johnson, Mayhall, Mosley, or Williams.
All right, so you have before you those written materials that were submitted. You have before you the written materials that were submitted.
Thank you.
And I have a question. So, because this is just an internal, or we're deciding whether to rehear it or not, was notification given to the neighbors that we would be taking this up today?
So this is not like a hearing, a deliberation on the properties, but I don't believe there was a notice requirement attached to this.
One clarifying question. So we could determine if we accept the rehearing or not based on the additional information the applicant submitted at this point to us. So based on those few pages of the document, we will need to determine if we accept the rehearing or not. Not the future, not submitted evidence, but what we have right now.
Correct. You can only base your decision on what you have before you.
And one more question. Our basis for that decision is that those materials were not available at the prior hearing, correct?
Correct. So the evidence has to be evidence that could not reasonably have been presented at the previous hearing.
So the other question I have is that if we deny this rehearing based on needing additional evidence, then they had 60 days from the date of the original decision to appeal. So does that then knock them out of being able to apply again?
So you mean like if they were to appeal this to transfer circuit? So they'd still be within the 60 days at this point.
This is a difficult one, so I will start. Based on the information I was provided by about this property, I did not see any new information specific to this asking for economic hardship. I do see some general information as well as some picture, but it was available for us at the last hearing. So the information I received did not consider as a new evidence for us to consider economic hardship case. So therefore, I am inclined to not to accept a rehearing at the next month.
I'd like to hear from other commissioners.
I don't find that the new information reaches the standard of care required for a rehearing.
Okay.
I don't either.
So based on other commissioners' comments, my review of the evidence that's been submitted, I move that we deny the request for a rehearing.
The vice chair has made the motion.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Mosley. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. So we will not rehear this project.
Based on the information.
Based on the information that is in the SharePoint as well. Okay. I think that's it. Ms. Siegler, is there anything else we need to clarify? Okay. All right. People in the chamber, thank you so much for waiting till the very end. Hopefully that was educational for you. And always good to have public here to have a little bit of what we do. So thank you, and hopefully it'll help you in what other projects that you have going. Okay, thank you so much, commissioners, staff, and we are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.